but I ended up having an underlying.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Paranormal Addicts, Season 2, Episode 21. My guest today is my good friend, Josh Morris. So we'll start out like we always do. And Josh, just introduce yourself to everybody, and then we will go from there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me, of course. And well, my name is Josh. Some people call me Teps now, of Teps Investigates, formerly known as the Everything Paranormal Show podcast, turned into um, basically a reality show on Paraflix called Teps Investigates. We actually had an original series before that called Para Explorers, but we are now in season 2 of Teps Investigates. Again, you can find that on Paraflix. And of course, you can find me on YouTube if you look up Teps Investigates. I do have some things on YouTube. And if you look for me on Facebook, you'll find me on the Everything Paranormal Show still. So, but I've been doing this for about 30 years and, started out just a quick kind of summary of who I am. Um, I started out again like 30 years ago, and then when I was in Florida, I was married at the time, and me and my wife at the time had started a paranormal team, and we stumbled across doing the preliminary investigations for the very first reality show called Ghost Hunters. So we started doing preliminary investigations for the show. We did some of those in that southern, like Florida Panhandle, Georgia, Alabama, things like that. And then again, just been involved, and then started to kind of do my own thing. Kind of got away from the industry for just a little bit there. We were raising a kid, and then had come back, and I'd always been around, just always off in the background doing my own thing. And then about 7 or 8 years ago or so, I think I decided to start kind of getting on YouTube and started doing a podcast and doing that like once a week, having guests and all that. Then it led into going out in the field and going back to doing some live investigations and then forming a team again. And so everything, and like I said, Paraflix started up about 4 years ago, and they came to me and we were talking, and they said, "Hey, do you have any ideas?" And I said, "Yeah, here's a show I want to do." So we started doing Para Explorers, and then I did some short films also for them. And then, like I said, a couple of years ago, started doing Teps Investigates.
Well, it's interesting, I guess, because I introduced you as my friend. You are my friend. We've actually had the privilege of hanging out with each other and investigating with each other. But you know, so I almost don't want to ask you the icebreaker questions, but I'm going to ask them anyway. So let's go ahead and do the icebreaker questions. The
Sure.
first one is a two-part question, and it's what is your favorite location that you've investigated, and what is your bucket list location you want to investigate?
Yeah, it really is hard to say for favorite location. Um, but for some reason, because I've been to so many and there's so many good places, and I hate to shortchange different people because I know even I still talk to different contacts at some of these locations, some of the property managers, and they're gonna be like, he didn't say my location. Um, But I will say a place I've been to a few times, and God, I don't know, man. It's so, oh, I would almost have to say when it comes to the amount of paranormal activity and not disappointing, I would probably have to lean in and just give the edge to the Nickerson Sneed. Um, Nickerson Sneed House dates back to the late 1700s. Started out as a small fort um, at in the Revolutionary times, and then it eventually turned into like an antebellum little mansion type thing. It was built upon around the cabin. Some of the original cabin is still in the middle of it. I've investigated a few times now. It is actually the season finale of season one for Teps Investigates, and I also have some other additional stuff on my YouTube channel from it. But it never seems to disappoint. Um, and in fact, one of the and you got to meet Alan, one of my lead investigators, who when he came down here in the end of 23 to investigate with me, and I took him to Nickerson Sneed. He stayed there in the house because it was like a bed and breakfast as well now, and he stayed there, and we did a 2-night investigation, and it sort of made him into a believer to the fact where he ended up moving down here just to join the team and be on the show and become a full-time or like a paranormal investigator. So the place has that ability to do that. Um, and I would say because it sort of edged out, just in case anybody's wondering what did it edge out. I would almost also like to say that the honorable mention would be the old hospital on College Hill in Williamson, West Virginia.
That's a good place.
Love that place. Love Tanya and Charlie. Great people. Just a good location and it's not as well known as other places, but still love the place. But there's so many great locations. As far as bucket list goes, I would just have to say all of Europe. You know, all of Europe, man. Well, and I will say this that specifically for some reason I would want to try to get to uh, the church. What is it? New Hamby. There's a famous photograph from this church of New Hamby there, where there's this phantom, and in fact, my logo, the phantom in the middle is that phantom from the Church of New Hamby there, and it was something that stuck with me since I was a kid. I saw the image, and I just thought, man, this picture was captured by a priest, and it's like, why would a priest fake an image, like that? Like, and this apparition would be like 9 to 10 feet tall. It was very haunting, very creepy, and it just stuck with me and it eventually became my logo. So I would have to pay homage and want to go at least there, to at least go back to roots or something.
So yeah, I'm like you, and it's hard to pick a favorite location. Um, yeah, it's just hard, because so many, you know. But like you said, I guess as far as places that's never disappointed, is a place that you can't really investigate anymore. It's a place in Eastern Kentucky. It's the Metropolitan Hotel. It's actually a violent haunting, and it doesn't disappoint. And then, as far as bucket list, I kind of have like two. I kind of have like one I know I'll never make it to, and that's the catacombs. I love to go to the catacombs, and my more realistic ice bucket list location is Alcatraz. I'd like to investigate Alcatraz.
Yeah, at least unless if they turn it into a real prison, then we may not get it.
And what's interesting is I've been doing this a long time too, as you know, and I find myself like the location that I investigated last weekend was actually one that the ghost hunters investigated, and I'm like, I didn't even know it. So yeah, there's a lot. There's like you said, there's a lot of good places out there. I love the hospital at College Hill. That's one of my favorite places. Um,
Well,
yeah.
I would like
Most
to add, I would say that I sometimes I'm a little different when it comes to, like, if you follow my content, you'll notice that I don't tend to go to a lot of the big box locations. I've been to some of the big locations and they are impressive, don't get me wrong, but I really thrive in the smaller or lesser known places because there's so many good hauntings and stories that happen in these other places. So going to a lesser known place, discovering the story, discovering the haunt, it's like untapped stuff. It's so much more fun for me than going to the same, because you can go on the internet and you can find like 1,000 videos of Waverly Hills or Penhurst and things like that, and they're great locations because they did have a lot of trauma and things like that. But there's been so many teams, so many things that go there. I love going to the places that just have that a little more of an intimate story, and that's just one thing about me. That's one thing. I just wanted to throw that out there when we're talking about those things.
I guess I'm the same way because I've been to the big box locations, and but that's for example. Everybody assumes since I'm from Kentucky, my favorite location is Waverly Hills, and I've been to Waverly Hills. It's a good location, but like you said, I prefer to get to like last weekend we went to the Glen House.
Oh,
It's 1883 Spanish mansion. They call it a house, but it's a mansion. Trust me. And
right,
and and when it was built, it was like the family had money, and it's kind of been forgotten. And I I was able to get there, and I got in touch with spirits that other people had never got in touch with before. And that's what it's about. It's about helping fill out the story. And,
right,
and so, and the Glen House has actually became like my location that I've got where I'm going to try to help build up because obviously 1883 house it needs some repairs done, some stuff to the roof, and all that stuff. So I'm trying. Ever since I went there, that uh, Jimmy Ricker is the one who introduced me to it, and ever since I went there, that's became my place. So yeah, I definitely get that. As usual, we're in the same league there. So all right. So next icebreaker question is, what is your favorite piece of equipment? And you can't say Josh. So what's your favorite piece of equipment that you?
well, I don't have it right in front of me, so normally I like to have my ghost hunt equipment nearby, but I honestly, I'm just gonna say the audio recorder. You know, it's not as flashy and as in style anymore, but it almost always delivers because EVPs are some of the in my opinion really about the only or best evidence that a ghost hunter is going to truly find. Pictures are and audio pictures, and you can say audio is subjective, pictures is subjective, but I mean when you do get that audio, it's so hard to dispute sometimes. I mean, yeah, if you get like a class C or something, and but when you start getting like class B and class A audio, it is so nice, and it's hard to deny that. It really is, especially when you experiment in places that you've controlled the environment. You know that there's no other outside factors, and so it's just some of my favorite evidence in that case, but again, it's not as flashy for TV shows or even YouTube shows because it's not instant gratification. The little spirit box, your spirit boxes and all that. That's more instant, for people, and it's they can see those things, and then you get your little Xbox ghosts, your Connect ghosts, which again I'm not a fan of those because again the way the technology works is not very good, but it's good for shows because people see it. So
Yeah, I agree with all that. I mean, a voice recorder, like you said, that to me that's an essential piece of equipment. My team, as we know, my team's a large team. We have 17 members now. We just added two more, but you can't just join my team. We have orientation, we have training, we have all this stuff, and part of the orientation is I require all my investigators to have a voice recorder. I'm like, I don't care if you the other stuff I don't care about, but a voice recorder you have to have. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
I guess the best, my best EVP I've ever got. I've got some good ones, but the best one I ever got was at the Anderson Hotel that I was talking about earlier, and they have they have a malicious spirit there, and he lived there. He lived there, and he drunk himself to the point that he hung himself in the closet.
Mm.
And like all of his liquor bottles are there. They want this place to be this way. But anyway, long story short, he ran prostitutes in and out of the hotel. That's what he did. So you remember Jill that you met at Smoky Mountain Terror? Jill's daughter is on my team too. And at the time, she was 19, and she decided to use the prostitute thing to get the guy talking. So he went up to her. When she came upstairs, she was like, "I'm 19 and cute. Can I get a job?" And the response we got, and it's just as clear as I'm telling you right now, I still have it. The response we got was $50 and a free room.
Yeah. No, I mean, like out of all the years of the investigations, EVPs to me are, again, you can have a whole library of them. There's so many good ones. A really solid, loud one, and I always recommend. I tell people there is on my YouTube channel. There's a video. Not if you scroll down in my videos, not too far, but you'll see where I'm kind of making this face like, you know, and on the thumbnail, and it's like unbelievable EVP or something. And it was me and Brian from another paranormal team, and we were doing a filming a show, and it was at the Kelly Farm in Kodak, Tennessee, and like we were in the middle of nowhere. You have to hike to get back to this house. It's on state park property. It was at night, but the lady laughed into the microphone, and not only was it louder than us, which we were standing right there with our equipment. There's no way anybody could have snuck up and laughed louder than us right into the microphone. And on top of that, not only was it on the camera microphone, but it was on the audio recorder on the mantle for the EVP session. And we never heard it until playback. So we had two devices that caught it exactly time stamped and louder than it was, and you just clearly heard this woman laughing. It is so good, and I tell people to go check that out because it's like a little 12-minute video. And I actually show raw footage. Like, it was so good that Paraflix CEO, literally Natalie, like called me up, was like, she almost thought I was faking it. It was so good, and I was like, I don't fake. She's like, I know you don't fake. And so she said, well, you might want to do like a special and show the raw files. And I did. I was like, look, here's the raw files, here's the raw audio file. And we did all that. So, anyways, but I love the audio recordings.
Yeah, I had a similar experience last weekend at the Glen House. So, I have, as we know, I have all the fancy equipment just because it looks good on TV, I guess. And anyway, so we were set up. I was using my Paratech. I love my Paratech, and so I was using it and the voice recorder and video camera. So I was doing like a little EVP session, and so one of the most interesting characters from the history of the Glen House is the daughter. Her name was Sarah, and I'm not going to even try to tell a story because I can't do it justice. But she got married, and it was like a big deal because they were a wealthy family. They had like both her husband was wealthy too. They had like pianos and organs flown in and everything. I mean, it was a big deal. So she was married and she took off to California to be an actress. And she came back and then she ended up, long story short, she ended up being like married 5 times and all this stuff. But anyway, so the first, while we were still getting the tour, we got to see this picture of Sarah, you know, and her eyes are just like, you know, put me in, drew me in. So like, so we we got we got we got. So I was doing the EVP session, and this the spirit told me it was angry spirit, and I was like, okay. So anyway, so after a few questions, I was trying to figure out who the spirit was, and it told me it wasn't family. So I was like, okay. I was like, who are you? And it said ex-husband. And I caught it, and then when we went back and played it on the audio recorder, we got it on the audio recorder too. Right. So you know that's and I called and talked to the curator and stuff, and apparently nobody's ever been able to talk to Sarah's ex-husband. Like, and right. So that was interesting. So yeah,
it was nice to have those moments.
Yeah, yes, it makes it all worthwhile. But you know what's interesting? What's interesting, and you'll appreciate this, Josh. So when I did my lives there from there Saturday, I did 2 lives. The first one I got some activity. The second one I didn't get any activity, but I still left it out there because it's important. It's important for people to understand we don't always get stuff. You know, people need to understand that. You know, the spirits don't always talk to us. So right. You know, but it was a good night.
Oh yeah, and yeah, but yeah, just shout out to Stacy in the chat there because you know that was Stacy he did a lot of co-hosting with me on my podcast. He's a good guy. He knows a lot. Very knowledgeable.
so let's talk a little bit about what got you into investigating.
I mean, it was again. I think it's kind of a common story with a lot of investigators. You know, you kind of start out a lot of times. It's a little more inward. You know, it's more of a selfish journey at first. You know, for me, it was, you know, curiosity. It was, you know, just answering questions of like just things that had happened every once in a while in my childhood. Like I didn't have a ton of paranormal things that went on in my childhood. Like I would never claim that, you know, I lived some kind of crazy haunted or psychic life or something as a child. But I would have a few moments that would happen and I'm like, and they were fairly significant, but like at the same time, I just kind of brush it off as a kid, you know. And as you got older, you just kind of look back and go, well, you know, maybe I was a kid, you know. So maybe I didn't quite realize whatever, and so you just kind of rationalize it like that. And then, but then you start to get even older, and like I said, about 30 years ago, I was like, well, you know, maybe I should research a little bit, and I just would, you know, start finding books or you know different people and I just started looking into things a lot more, and then it just sort of snowballed, and then eventually you get to the point where when you do start your own team, then when the first time you ever go and help somebody, because at first, I'm not going to lie, the very first case I had, you know, I was more thinking about it like, hey, this is an opportunity for me to investigate a place. You know what I mean? I wasn't really thinking about the family as so much. And I hate admitting that, but selfishly I was. You know, I was a lot younger and it was my first time. I'm like, hell yeah. But then I think there was something that changed for me when I was able to get answers for the people and give them some advice to help them out. And it started to change that inward to more outward. because at that point I had start to learn that there was something beyond. So my personal journey was sort of somewhat satisfied. But now it was more about, well, now I'm helping people. And so then I was helping people. But then also, of course, the show ended up happening, and then that the entertainer side of me was also satisfied a little bit to entertain people. Again, I don't fake, but just being able to provide those thrills and to provide like the investigation and the scariness of people watching, going, "Weren't you scared in that?" Like, oh, but providing that to people, and then knowing that people also were learning things from the shows or the podcasts or my knowledge, whatever it is, but that people are learning and then meeting different people. Um so yeah, I mean, it's for me, that's where the journey went through.
So I love the fact that you said that you help people, and you admitted, you openly admitted that your first case, we didn't, obviously we don't really know what we're doing when we start. So we're just getting our feet wet. My journey is a little bit unique, or a little bit different. Is a lot of people kind of have the same story. I was one of the lucky ones, I guess. That I was born with abilities to as a medium, whatever sensitive, whatever term you want to give me. I've always had the ability to see and speak to them. Always have. Uh, as a kid, it scared me to death. I ain't gonna lie. As you know, I consider it a gift now, and I consider it as a gift. To me, that's my gift from God, and He wants me to use it to help people.
Right.
I didn't see that as a kid. As a kid, I was like, yeah. So, but yeah. So when I first decided that I was really going to try to investigate, I was like 13 or 14. So this was 19. I don't even want to say 1987, 1988, and so obviously being here in Western Kentucky, I didn't get a whole lot of support in my adventures at that time. So,
Yeah.
my best friend at the time, he was in it with me, and so we started checking out like any book we could. Like I read all of Ed Lorraine's Warren's books. I read, anything I could find. We actually got called down to the principal's office because I don't know what they thought, but anyway, so that's how I got.
Those kids and that satanic stuff.
Yeah, so that's how I got started. So like when all of our
Stuff
friends,
for the devil.
I actually have been told that several times, that my gift was a gift from the devil, and I was a tool of the devil. But while our friends was going to like the local haunted attractions and all that stuff, me and Tracy, we actually spent the night in like places that were actually supposed to be haunted. So that was kind of my end. And then, when I finally moved away, go to college and go with the Army, that's when I started actually finding that support to learn how to use my gifts. I'm now, I'm an educated investigator. I went ahead and got I got my degree in parapsychology. I got 2 degrees in theological studies, and then I got a certificate of demonology studies from the old Catholic Church, for Bishop Long.
Right.
So because I want to make sure that I can help people. You know what I'm saying? Because if you go in and you don't know what you're doing, you can actually make a situation worse.
Right. Well, and I think a big important thing is ego. So there's a lot of investigation
Yeah.
teams out there. There's a lot of them out there. And a lot of nowadays they look at, well, where do you rank on social media? So the higher you rank on social media, the more experienced or the better you're supposed to be. And that's definitely not true. some of the best ones are ones that maybe probably don't even have social media, to be honest with you. But a lot of it to me is like I try to tell investigators all the time because over the years I've seen so many people fall by the wayside or have destructive things happen in their life because they like you have to have no matter what level of experience you have, everybody needs to have a little bit of mentorship with other people, and it's just good to exchange ideas and philosophies and knowledge with peers. If you have an ego and you don't do that and you think that you know everything or you think you have a lock on everything or you think that your way is right, then it really you're probably far from the truth, to be honest with you. You have to be open to have that mentorship. There if you do this long enough, you will see. And you see the young investigators, there's like phases. When you first start out, you're arrogant, you're cocky, you think all these things, and then there's things that start to humble you a little bit, and you like we talked about earlier, you start to become a little more less inward. But then you still think, well, now I think I know, but you still don't know, and then you start taking shit home with you. You start taking paranormal baggage home with you, and you don't realize how to you're like I didn't think about this aspect of it, and now you've got to learn the spiritual side of things. Or if you had a gift, you have to learn how to use your gift, how to control your gift, how to do all these things. There's so many ways, and it's there's not a manual out there. You have to talk to other people. You have to learn. Even at my level, like no matter how much experience I've done, no matter how many I've gone to, yes, I do know a lot. I've been doing this a long time. I've been out in the field a lot, but I don't know everything, and I still turn to certain people and we exchange ideas in the chat. Talic Paranormal Media, Stacy Talich, he's one of my mentors as well. But also I like to give him feedback from the field and we exchange ideas. But I can admit it because I don't have an ego. I can say, hey, there's people out there when it comes to certain spiritual knowledge, they know more than me, and I'm way comfortable saying that. But also, I've been doing this for 30 years, so I have a lot of knowledge that is valuable for other teams and other people that aren't as experienced as well. But you have to swallow that pride. You have to get rid of that ego and work with other people and quit judging them on their social media or views or followers. Start looking at their experience and listen to what they have to say. So that's just my 2 cents on the industry there.
So yeah, well, I agree. I mean, you know, I have no ego. We know this. Matter of fact, as you know, when the security at work tried to tell me they were going to sign me to a contract, I even asked them why they wanted to put my radio face on TV. So yeah, Wade Kirby. I don't know if you know Wade or not, but he said something when he was on the show last season that I think is very true. He said, in this field, the best piece of advice he can give anybody is to always keep learning. We have to learn from each other. And the way I like to say it, and I say this all the time, is in this field, we're either green and growing or we're ripe and rotting. And I don't want to be rotting. I've been doing it 35 years, and I'm still learning every day. But you're right. Ego has slipped into the field. I think it's kind of going more back towards the way it used to be. But 2 years ago, it was bad. It was really bad. We got to see a little bit of that when we was at Smoky Mountain Terror. We had one group that I'm not going to mention charging $60 for a picture.
Yeah, and did anybody from that group really walk on over to their fellow peers and say, "Hey, man, it's nice to meet you, whatever, blah blah blah." Like, no, like they did their celebrity thing, and the rest of us were just the lonely, amateurs, I guess. even though like I'm probably twice their age.
It was interesting. So I was surprised, humbled. I was humbled at the fact how many people actually already knew who I was when I was there. Because I consider myself a nobody. People get on to me all the time, but I'm a nobody. That's it. But a lot of people. I mean, you talk to most of the people. You saw how many people actually already knew the podcast on me. I was surprised. I mean, but yeah, there's no place for ego in this thing. So I'll ask this question because that's kind of what we're batting around. So para-pop culture, that's my word, para-pop culture. How do
Paraculture?
you para-pop culture? How do you think the para-pop culture has affected the field, both positively and negatively?
Are we allowed to cuss?
No passes.
Oh man, dang it. Well, look, I mean, like, look, I can't, I don't want to be hypocritical because I do have a show. I have an original series, and I don't want to
Well,
be hypocritical. But
I get that. I have a
at the
show.
same time, I will say that I think the shows ultimately ended up being negative. I think we went backwards. I know some people that shares that opinion, and I know even somebody from one of the cable network shows that I talked to um, shared that opinion. I don't want to say his name just in case because I can't remember if that was on the record or off the record. But uh, in any case, we went backwards in the world of paranormal. We really have. Because now there's even more distrust from the general public of what they see on TV. Because not only has we had a decline in the TV shows, but then we also had a rise in YouTube. But now we're on the decline of that as well, be- because when the TV shows were on a decline, everybody's like, "Oh, it's like fake." There was a lot of things that were leaking out to the public. There was a lot of these things, so people were like, so they started turning to YouTube, and then YouTube had they were like, oh, well, it must be real because these guys are like amateurs. And so you had the rise of the amateur YouTuber that had these like home video style, almost Blair Witch style videos. And so people were like, oh, it's got to be real. They didn't realize that these people were just taken advantage of, and they were basically like amateur filmmakers, and they were using quick cuts and strings and early green screen and still clean plating and stuff. They were using all these tricks to fake the paranormal, but people were like, oh, it's got to be real, it's got to be, these guys are just amateur dudes, and they become huge, and now they're guys that are 6 7 follow digit followers, and they're still out there, faking it. But the point is that now again everything went on to decline because you had again, as the word spread and as the popularity blew up on YouTube. Well, with every rise there must be a fall, right? So now we're on the decline now. We're there's it's not a trending thing anymore. It's paranormal. Um, it's rough for guys like me and yourself, guys that are a lot more legit, that are trying to do things straight and narrow. Hey, my show could be a lot more popular. It's okay, and I do well on Paraflix, but it could be better if I started faking things. If I started faking things, I could probably blow up YouTube and start having 6 or 7 digit followers if I started to fake things. But unfortunately, I got to have a thing called morals, so
and
whatever.
you got yeah. So here's my take. People might be tired of listening to my take, but it's my podcast, so I get to say it anyway. So my take is, hi Brandy. So so first of all, that I consider myself really part of the para pop culture. I guess I am, especially now that I'm going on Screw Network and stuff. But I have a lot of friends that are definitely part of the para pop culture. I got you and Jimmy, and then Aaron G. Thompson is a really good friend of mine. Gavin Kelly's a really good friend of mine. But the thing is, none of those people fake stuff. So all the it's mostly the YouTubers. You're right. Nowadays, it is mostly the YouTubers. You turn to YouTube, and everything's a demon. Everything, blah blah blah. So, like you said, that's ruined the reputation of the rest of us, and it's also made it harder on us because there's locations now. This is how it personally affected me. I think I've shared this story with you before, but so Harriman Hospital, they're in Tennessee. When they reopened it 2 years ago, my team was the second or third team to go investigate it. When we get there, and we have to sign the waiver like you do everywhere, right? So, but they added a new part to the waiver. They added a part to the waiver that said that we could release our video until it was approved by the location. And they told me point blank, they're like, this is because of this group.
Right.
It was because of Sam and Kobe. I mean, they told me that point. They told me that point blank. Same thing happened at Octagon Hall. Same thing, and like you said, they're good-looking kids. They fake stuff, so everything's always something. So they got a following. They buy a school and triple the price to investigate it. Why? Because there's the Spice Girls on the paranormal field, and they can do their thing. Here's my thing, Josh. So it was pointed out to me last year by my good friend Sarah from Get Hunted. When she was on the show, she pointed out the thing that we have to admit, even though we don't want to, there's a place in the field for them, because the people that tune into that are not going to be the same people who tune into me and you. They're not tuning in to see what a real investigation is. They're just tuning in to be entertained. So, yeah. And I don't care what they do.
I still don't accept that because it might be the same people, but they have different expectations now because they're seeing Sam and Colby or whoever, and they're seeing them do these crazy things, and then they come to something like my show or whatever, and they expect that bar. And when your stuff falls short because you're just showing them legitimate paranormal, then they walk away and they don't come back. So there's not a repeat business because they go back to the sensational stuff, and so for me, I don't think there's a place for it at all, unless they're specifically saying that this is fake, whatever, and they're very upfront and people want to watch that. Like, I compare it to like WWE wrestling or something. People know it's fake, but they go there to watch the drama, the storylines. They know it's fiction. It's just, it sucks. It sucks. In that.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, my point, and I made this point, on that episode too. My point is, I don't care what they do until it made it harder on the rest of us. Now that they're affecting, like you said, now that the sensationalism is affecting realism, that's the problem. And now that they're keeping me from being able to release my videos, that's the problem. Now, so here's my best story. So Aaron G. Thompson, he was my speaker last year at my Paracon, my headliner. So he did. I told him
this year.
that would be you. So Aaron's fiance called me, who was also his manager. She called me last year, and she's like, Aaron wants to do the event. I'm like, I don't really know who Aaron is except for 28 Days Haunted. And so my event, as you know, is about real. It's not about so I told him I wanted to have him on my show before I agreed. So he came on my show. Well, I don't watch a lot of the shows because they're fake. So the night before he came on my show, I binge watched all of 28 Days Haunted. Uh, and and so then when I had him on my show, what's sad is Aaron has actually been investigating for like 25 years, but and he's a good investigator. He's a legit guy, good guy. But because of the generation we're in, everybody thinks of him as 28 Days Haunted, and that's not fair to him. So yeah. The
Well,
only
that's the thing is, it's like once you cross over to the dark side, to use like a Star Wars reference, once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. And that's the thing is like, I know that if I was to do that and say I was rewarded for it by having, viral videos and whatever, you get rewarded for that. And then now where's your reputation? So now when you do and you go out and you go to these events, like when I go to your place and I talk about real events and I talk to people about how to become a real ghost hunter and things like that. And I speak at events like yours. When I go to expos, I do panels. Then if you're once you're fake, once you're found out and your reputation's gone, then everything else you're just hot air. You know what I mean? And I don't want to get into that. Like I don't want to become that person. I would rather have a solid reputation and never be fully famous because I'm not seeking fame. I really
me,
could care less. I want to get behind the camera, to be honest with you. I want to get out in front of the camera and get behind the camera.
right.
Um, uh, it's a lot easier, in my opinion, but, um,
I mean,
what, you know,
I agree. I mean, you know, unfortunately, there are people who have gotten into the field to become famous, and that's not the right reason to get in it. And and that's what's caused all the drama that we've had the last few years. For it was explained to me, like you said, it's about ego. For some reason, some people think that they have this spot on the totem pole, and these other ones are trying to take their spot. There's no spot. We're supposed to work together. We're supposed to, you know,
like
the
probably one
reason
of the
we
most fakest words,
did.
one of the most fakest words, para unity. That's
Right,
bullshit. I mean,
right.
that's bull. Sorry.
Well, a good friend of mine who is a para celebrity, but he's anti-para celebrity, which is interesting. He actually wrote a book on it. But anyway, the thing is, his exact words to me was, "Para unity is dead." There you go.
Here's
He
my
he
book.
he actually said he actually said to me, he's like, "Para unity's dead." He's like, it doesn't exist anymore. He's like, forget So that's the thing. My thing is, Josh, I'll work with anybody as long as you're not faking stuff, and I don't want people provoking either. But provoking is an interesting thing, and we're going to talk about that in just a second.
Well, and it's like, look, it's like when you and I got to meet in person, and then we got to go out and we investigated the shrine. It wasn't a full on investigation, so to speak, but you and I got to at least get out and go to a location together. Um, and I think that you start to be able to feel out investigators um, when you actually get to go and investigate with them. Because all the talk you can talk all the talk, but once you get out there and you go on somebody's investigation, that's where I've weeded out some people in the past where I've worked with people, and then when I get on their investigation, all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, do you want to enhance?" And I'm like, "What the fuck does I mean, whoops. What does that mean?" And they're like, and I'm like, "No." And then, of course, I'm not stupid, and I'm like, "Well," I'm like, "No, I don't want to enhance." And and then after that, it's like, okay, you just don't really want to work with those people anymore. You just don't. I mean, it's it's sad, but I really want people to have genuine content. I want people to know that they can come to me, and even if they're messaging me, email me. I got people that regularly email me every once in a while, and they'll just be like, "Hey, man, I here's my situation, and I work with people remotely like that. Um, I just want to provide that genuine help for people in that sense, or a show that's entertaining to them, and they know that what they're watching is real, and they get to see unique locations and not just the same big box stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. I think the best compliment that I got, because I'm like you, I take pride in my reputation. So last weekend when we went to visit the Glenn House, originally they said that one of their staff members would have to be on site. And then when we got there, they were like, "Oh, they're like, we've had so many people call and tell us that you were good that we're just going to give you the keys and leave." So
Yeah.
that made me proud. So yeah. So okay, let's talk a little bit about provoking. Uh, uh, I'm not a fan of provoking. Uh, the thing is, and this is how I explain it to people, is you wouldn't go into somebody's house and just start yelling at them and expect to have a positive reaction. So why would you do that to a spirit? You know. So, uh, but I think a lot of provoking depends on the intention. It's all about intention. Um, what's your take on that, Josh?
Well, I'm very much in line with that. Like, I'm very respectful when I go places. Um, especially, well, we can't even talk about the shrine because that's a unique place. But uh, okay, provoking is a tool. Okay, it is a tool in our bag of tools. However, it should be only used in specific cases. So, for example, if I have a home that is and it's a residential case, and it's a spirit that is attacking or harming people, okay? If I go into that investigation and I cannot seem to make contact because the entity knows it's scared of me, or it knows the ability that we have as investigators to cleanse that entity or to basically kick it out of the house, they will hide. And sometimes you have to provoke a mean spirited spirit uh, to bring them out. That's the only time when I'm there to help a human, to help a family, to help somebody that's being tormented. That's, in my opinion, that's the only time provocation is acceptable. Beyond that, most all spirits you can pretty much go in with respect. There's a mutual. They pretty much will know, and you'll be able to communicate. You don't need to use provocation.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I'm not going to say I've never provoked. I had a situation where the spirits that were at the location, it was a child spirit and abusive father. So I mean, I challenged the abusive father. Why? Because he attacked one of my team members. You
Right.
know, he physically, one of my team members was only 17 at the time, my son, and he actually pushed my son down the steps. So
I'm gonna
I
ask
said,
you. I'll ask you a question.
okay.
Okay, and this will be controversial sometimes. So here's the real question: when somebody gets attacked by a spirit, is it a negative ghost?
Not always. Not always. Not always. For example, I'd like to use this example. This thing about Penhurst. Penhurst had a lot of patients that were kids, and a lot of them were mute and deaf. So a lot of times, if you feel somebody tugging on you or pushing you, they'll just try to get your attention.
Well, yes, and that's what I try to explain to a lot of people. Many people, when they get attacked, scratched, pushed, shoved, whatever, they immediately assume it's a negative spirit. But you have to investigate because, again, and like I try to explain to people, is imagine if, like right now, you know how to speak because you have a mouth, you have vocal cords, you figured it out. You can grab stuff because you have hands. But when you die and you're nothing but energy, you have no physical form, you don't always know how to communicate or touch or grab. And so you could be harming people because that's the only way you figured out how to cross that
their attention.
divide and get somebody's attention, and it turns into a form of a scratch or a push. And so I like to bring that up because, again, a lot of investigators, you see them as soon as they get scratched or shoved, they're immediately going to like a demon, or because it's the most sensational, right? It's the most sensational. They're like, "Oh my God, there's a demon here," or this is a real bad ghost, and it's scary and all this other crap because it's hype, it's sensationalism, So
Right. Yeah. So I agree. Yeah. So let's talk about haunted objects. So objects with attachments. That seems to be a hot topic lately in the paranormal field. I guess because they decided to take Annabelle on tour. So, what is your take on a haunted object?
um, I mean, it's hard to say because I can't say that I haven't come across them. There does seem to be some objects that seem to hold an attachment. I don't know why. I can't explain it. A lot of people have explanations, but in all truthfulness, we don't know the true rules. And, I think there's a lot of things that can hold energy or have energy or residual, especially with, you know, there's a lot of elements in this world, crystals, and there's just a lot of things that can hold energy. And I don't know. Some spirits may have attachments to certain things. I seem to find that when I've investigated a few antique stores or antique malls in my life, I've seen to have some things like that where you come across a variety of objects. But I don't tend to give a lot of things too much attention when it comes to objects themselves, unless they are invoking spirits activity, you know. Excuse me. So, um, so yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple of theories that's been going around, and uh, I had I had Thomas Goley on my show last week, and his theory is that the object ain't really is not really haunted. There's energy around the object, and so. But I mean, think about it. So I guess when you say haunted objects, most people think about dolls. Whether it's Robert or Annabelle or whatever, or the dolls that we saw at the shrine. So uh, by theory, you can see that because that was that kid's best friend. So there had to be some energy transfer there, and so. But I guess the question is when does so much energy transfer that it actually becomes its own entity? I guess
That's
that's the
tough.
question.
That is tough because, again, you know, uh, a lot of times, yeah, is it going to be a doll or something that is going to be able to sort of inhabit that form? That is it going to manifest that form? Because you got to imagine that we have the physical form to sort of shape our entity, right? So when you become nothing but energy and you want to transfer that to something to resemble that same shape, whether it's a smaller form like a doll, but if you inhabit a hairbrush, I mean, I don't, again, it's kind of weird like that. But I think that things that inhabit forms are things that are going to be similar to human shape, whereas objects like hairbrushes and things like that may just have residual energy. So that could be the difference. That could be the difference.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, you know, this is a pseudoscience, so it's all just theories anyway. You know, I don't think we'll ever actually know until we die and we get there. You know, I'm going to hand out K2 meters at my funeral. You know, so people can have fun with those. And then I'm going to have my son call everybody from my phone and say thanks for coming. So
Well, I do believe that one of my close friends who was a paranormal investigator, he was the lead investigator for, you know, um, a team, but his name was Bob Fountain. Great guy. And, you know, for the longest time, for almost like a year, I had my at the time I was married, and we couldn't, me and my wife at the time could not find our SB11. And we knew that for a while we had lost it, and it was returned to us. But then we lost it again, and then she always blamed me. Um, and for the longest time, we just could not find it. And we were going through cleaning one of the rooms, and we were just going through all the stuff, and we're just sitting there. And my friend had just passed away, and literally, like, we both turned, and on the table that was in the room, the SB11, for those of you, it's a spirit box and it has a kickstand. It literally had the kickstand out and was upright on the table, like in plain view. And the thing is like, neither one of us, like that room is used all the time. Like that table was a computer desk. So it would never have been there this whole time. Like, it literally, so we just kind of both were like, what the hell? Like, it blew our minds. And then we just kind of was like, and you just kind of felt, and we're just like, thanks, Bob. Like, we knew that we just had that feeling like Bob helped us find that. And somehow it ended up on the table. It was crazy. It was crazy. We had chills, like, goosebumps and stuff all over.
I definitely get that because, like, you know, I was talking about my best friend that I got started in the field with. We were best friends from first grade until uh, he he passed away the year after we graduated from high school. He fell asleep driving home, and but the thing that's interesting is, besides paranormal, the other thing that we did together was fish. He was big into fishing. So we'll be somewhere that has nothing to do with anything, and there'll be a fishing lure or a fishing hook. That happened to me at the Monroe House. We went to the Monroe House and got ready to sign the book, you know, saying we were there, and there was a fishing lure on the table. So yeah, you know. It's interesting anyway. I can't explain it. Let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about my event, September 27th in Mayfield, Kentucky. So you're speaking, and Jimmy Ricker speaking, and Jack from Memphis Ghost Hunters is speaking. There's 8 speakers, so it's going to be a good time. So the purpose of my event, if you notice, I don't call it a Paracon. And the reason I don't call it a Paracon is because Paracons have kind of got a bad reputation lately. We even have people that apparently use Paracons as a swingers convention. Apparently, I did not know this until I was speaking. I did.
Damn, now I'm disappointed.
I miss all the fun. So anyway, true story. I was set to speak at an event, and my topic I was speaking on was ethics in the paranormal field. That was my topic, and you know, I was planning on talking about, not faking stuff, that kind of stuff. And one of my friends called me, who's a para celebrity. He calls me and he's like, you might want to include this in there. I'm like, you're not. I'm like, you're not for real, are you? He's like, yeah. And he named people, some of the people he shares managers with, and I'm like, so yeah, apparently it happens. But anyway, so I call my event a Paranormal Expo because I want to focus on the positive, and I want to, I want to, I'm trying to bring an awareness to the community. So yeah, so I lost my train of thought, Josh. So yeah,
Oh, that's
so
okay. You were explaining why you don't call it Paracon, and
yeah,
so
so the thing is, we have to have the public come to these events because we don't want to lose money. And but really, when it comes to like people like me and you, other investigators, a Paracon, whatever you want to call it, to us, it really is a convention. We come there to socialize and hang out and learn from each other. And that's why I'm having you there, because we had talked a lot, but we had never actually met until last month. Everything just seemed to work out, and I invited you to come join me at the Smoky Mountain Terror, and we hit it off from the beginning, and that's what it's about. So, I just want to let everybody know this paying attention. I don't try to make a lot of money for my event. Admission for the whole day is $10, and you can come and go as you want. You get a wristband. I do have a few vendor spots left still. Anybody that wants to be a vendor, it's only $45 to be a vendor. So yeah, and to me, that's what it's all about. It's about the community and bringing awareness to the area. So I'm thankful to have you, and
I know, and
and yeah,
I'm so demanding too. I'm
I
such a
know.
diva. I'm such a diva.
Well, it's funny. It's not funny, haha. It's just funny. It goes back to the ego thing we were talking about earlier. So my event, besides being what it is, it's also a charity event. We donate 20% to charity. And the charity this year is actually Chiari malformation, which is the condition that I have. The reason I had to have my brain surgery and stuff. So obviously, with it being a charity event, I don't have a big budget. You know what I'm saying? So, and
I
with
know you
some of
said you
these,
didn't think you could afford me. I'm like, hey, I'm very reasonable.
so what's funny is the price that some of these people want. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not going to mention his names because I still like the guy. I still talk to him. But one of the guys were ghost hunters. I'll put it that way. One of the guys were ghost hunters, and not Jason, but one of the guys were ghost hunters wants $3,000 plus travel, plus room, and I'm like, no. I'm like, that's not happening. And
I really hope, like, in all honesty, I truly hope that I never get to a place where I have to charge for autographs. Now, I'm not going to say I don't know. Like, I think to me, it's like if people enjoy your stuff, they enjoy your show and all that, like, hey, show up. You want to buy some merchandise? Fine, buy some merchandise. You want an autograph? I'm going to do autographs. I'm going to do selfies. I don't want to charge. I never, because you remember at Smoky Mountain Terror, every celebrity charged except for a few of us. Um, and so even when like fans were coming up, they were like, when I would tell them like, "Hey, I don't charge," for selfie or photograph, they're like, "Really?" They were like surprised, and that's like, I don't want anybody to ever have to do that. And like, maybe you'll clip, maybe people will clip this someday and be like, "Remember, Josh, you said no, you were never going to charge." I don't want to. I don't ever want to charge or be that way because I just don't. I'm just me. I'm just me. I'm a humble dude. I don't care. You can come talk with me. I love talking with people. As you saw that at Smoky Mountain Terror. Well, you were out running around, fanboying. Kent's all running around fanboying, getting autographs. you know, uh, but I had been to quite a few of these, and I'm like, hey, like I just love meeting people and talking with people, and it sucked. My voice went out that day. Um, that first half of the Saturday, it sucked. But I come to find out I had like this low lying cold infection or something. So, my voice is still not 100%, but as you can tell, at least it's back. I mean, before
Yeah,
you remember that sucked so bad.
it was bad. So
But
I think I'm going to start charging $60 for a picture.
well, you gotta stay at the table for them to get a picture. Jeez.
But seriously, I'm the same thing. I'm the same way. I mean, we know I have no ego. Uh, I wasn't at my table a lot because I was socializing and networking. I met some good people there, and what was interesting is even like the celebrities that were there, the actual celebrities, not the team charging $60 for a picture, but the actual celebrities, you know, they were interested in what we was doing, because it's real. I talked to the lady from the Blair Witch Project, and she found it fascinating that I was a Christian, but I was a paranormal investigator. She's like,
Yeah.
"How does that work?" I was like, "To me, it works good." I was like, because I consider my gift a gift from God. So what's funny about that? Uh, you know, the Bible verse that people try to use to say that paranormal
Deuteronomy.
investigating. Yes, the King James version says, uh, do not speak to the spirits of the dead, because you don't know if they're good or evil." That's what it says. Okay, the actual Latin translation. Remember, I have 2 Bible degrees. the actual Latin translation says it a little bit different, but it's very important. The actual Latin version says, "Do not speak to the spirits of the dead unless you are trained or educated, because you don't know if they're good or evil." So that phrase is a very important phrase. So what people have to understand about the King James Version of the Bible is the King James Version of the Bible is a paraphrased translation.
Right.
So what that means for the people out there that look at me like, "What the hell are you talking about?" What that means is a group of people got together and said, "Well, this is what it means to us." So that's what we're putting in there. So, and the other thing they have to realize is the King James Version was written in Shakespearean style because that's what he wanted.
Oh,
So,
yeah. I mean, you could do like a whole podcast talking about the Bible and the differences between the King James version versus the Hebrew and Aramaic translations, and even with modern scholars, it's a whole other world, and it does change some of the dynamics a little bit. But ultimately, the quest, the Bible, ultimately, you can sum it all up and say that, and it's in Timothy, is that ultimately it's just the quest for God's the truth from God, the Word of God. It's the quest, and that's something that, like, what paranormal has done for me is it actually brought me closer to God. Because once I realized that there was something beyond this life, that told me, wait a minute, that means God's plausible. You know, if there's ghosts and spirits out there, that means God, which is, right, the Holy Spirit, he could exist then. If there's something magical beyond the physical plane of this world, that means that the
so
magical guy in the sky could be real. So, anyways,
the
that's
most
a whole, like I said, that's a
interesting,
whole other podcast.
the most interesting case I've ever had from a spiritual standpoint.
Jesus' resurrection. Oh, just
I'm not that old. First of all, I want to clarify. I don't know why I think I need to clarify, but I want people to understand. I'm not. I'm not a Baptist. I'm not a Catholic. I'm not. I'm a Christian. That means I have a relationship with God, with Jesus. That's what it means. It don't mean that I'm confessing to my preacher or I'm judging. Yes, I consider myself a born again Christian. Yeah, but you know, you, that doesn't mean this could be a whole episode, Josh. That doesn't mean
I told you.
that
It's a rabbit hole to go down for sure.
Yeah. So this might be a little bit deeper than we need to go, but that's okay. So I got my born again tattoo, and yeah. So and I've questioned the existence of God before. As we've talked about, I've not really talked too much about it on the show because I don't get real personal about myself. I just like to put other people on the spot. But I didn't have the greatest childhood. It was abusive and drugs and so like probably from the time I was 13 until I was probably 16, I actually literally probably tried to commit suicide every night. And I questioned God. I was like, if you were real, why am I in this spot?
Right.
Why would you put, and, kind of what changed that is I met my best friend and my first girlfriend, my first high school sweetheart, my only high school sweetheart. I met her through church, and her background, we both had similar at-home situations.
Right.
Strange thing was we didn't even talk about it. We just knew that we needed each other. Does that make any sense? Maybe not, but anyway. So we're on the same page anyway. So anyway, so to me, most of my teenage years, church was more of an escape than it was actually church.
Right.
Yeah. If you follow what I'm saying, I went to church to escape from being at home.
Yeah.
And of course it helped that Amy was there, but it was it was mostly so. So that's me. For disclosure, yes, I consider myself a Christian. Do I judge anybody else because they may be a Wiccan or No, that's not my job. I do not want that job. I am not here to judge people. So anyway,
and it kind of gets off the hook of the rabbit hole, right? It's like, look, when two paranormal investigators get together, there's like all these topics. There's like checklists, right? One's going to be religion. One's going to be like your beliefs on like where do you stand ethically with faking stuff. There's going to be what about cryptids? What about, and there's the checklist. And believe me, you and I could probably talk for 8 hours on where we stand on all these different topics, And so like, I get it. It's like, as soon as, you bring up the Bible, well, guess what? Now here's my opinion. Here's your opinion. This is what I'm at. And then we got to justify it to the people that are watching because it's like, are they going to consider us Bible bangers or Bible thumpers, And I'm the same way. Like, I don't belong to a church. I believe in God and Jesus Christ. For me personally, I do accept Jesus Christ as my Savior. But I get it from both sides. I get it from the hardcore religious folks, and they will tell me, hey, I'm following a form of necromancy and all this other crap, And then I get it from the other part of the paranormal community that are not Christians and they are more pagan based and things like that. And so I get it from both sides, but at the same time, like, hey, I'm not going to preach to most people. I'm not going to sit there and say, hey, man, have you found Jesus? I'm going to tell you my beliefs, or I'll give you my opinions on whatever you want to talk about, and that's how I've always laid it out there, and so most people will respect that. Now, when I wrote my book, I've had people that read my book and they've come back and said, I read your book. I really agree with a lot of your theories and a lot of things that you notated in there. And because you did cite passages from different ancient scriptures, I'm actually going to pick up and read the Bible for myself. And that was pretty cool. Like, I didn't expect to hear feedback like that. Um, but a lot of people didn't realize some of the stuff that I pointed out. That's some pretty cool stuff in the Bible. Like, people were like, I didn't know that was in there. So I'm not telling
The
people to
Bible,
go out and I'm not saying, hey, you should go out and read the Bible. But at the same time, like, I think people would be surprised if they read it for themselves as an adult and they don't necessarily have somebody standing over top of them trying to preach something. If they just pick it up and read it like themselves, you'll be surprised at like the stuff that's in there. You're like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like, I'm pretty
yeah,
blown away.
yeah. The thing that's interesting about me, I guess, is I used to actually be a youth evangelist. I used to actually travel and lead youth revivals and stuff, and that was one thing that the senior pastor. That's one thing he always liked about me is I challenged them. I'm not that person. You know this, Josh. I'm not that person. You're just going to tell this is what it says. I'm going to read it and decide for myself, and
All right.
and that's what it's all about. And so yeah. So to me, it's an important part of who I am. The question was asked, or to get on it a couple weeks ago, maybe longer. It was asked how religious beliefs form or paranormal beliefs, and my answer was I can't separate it. I know some people try to separate it, but to me, my gift is from God. He wants me to use it to help people. So, and so to me, there's no separation. My team and my team, we have all different backgrounds. We have Wiccan. We have two Wiccans. We have a Catholic. We have everything. We have some people who don't even believe in anything. Atheists, that's the term. We have an atheist. But when we go into an investigation, we still go in with protection. We pray before we go into a location. We do a
Right.
prayer. We do a prayer of protection and communication.
That's
And
another
before we
topic.
leave, yeah. But I'm trying to ease into that topic. I'm trying to go away from the religion.
No, because protection, you're right. But I'll let you finish. Go ahead, because you're right about that. There's something that you and I also share in common.
but but the thing is, and like I said, I don't know why I feel comfortable being so open with you. I mean, I guess because we connected immediately, and we're on the same plane on most lanes. So I'm pretty
It
well
helps
open.
when you're not a judgmental person. Like, I'm not a judgmental person, and usually, and I do have that. That is one of my gifts. Is people tend to like treat me like a priest, and I start becoming a confessional for people, and they're comfortable with telling me stuff, which is fine. I'm glad. I'm always happy to do that. But no, you're right. I wanted to point the same point to you that with my team as well. When I do my orientation with people, I tell people like, hey, look, I don't care what religion you do or what you believe in personally, but there is certain truths, there are certain things that when you do this over the years, there are certain things that you have to do. Like, there's spiritual protections. You have to protect yourself spiritually and things like that. You have to do when you, if not, you're going to be dragging home spiritual baggage. You got to make sure that you cleanse that off of you before you leave a place. There's just certain things that you have to maintain yourself do, and that's why you teach your people, you teach your team. I always consider everybody in my team as um, almost like interns, like they're learning, and I'm teaching them and helping them to level up their experiences over the years, and I learn from them too. Like, it's both ways, but I'm always, as the leader of my team, I always take it as a responsibility to train my people, to teach them, and again, regardless of their spiritual their religious beliefs, we're going to talk about spiritual safety.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 100%. And we also do a prayer detachment before we leave because we don't want anything going home with us. So yeah, and I think that's important. You know, yeah,
That
and,
teams people don't get it. Like a lot of like younger guys or gals that do this, they don't always get it. They think, that's stupid. But I have watched so many people that have that arrogance, and even myself back in the day, and they start taking spiritual baggage home. They don't realize it. And next thing you know, bad stuff is happening in their lives, not necessarily to them, but to their family or to their loved ones. And they don't get it. They don't realize that they've created this turbulent spiritual situation in their home and their surrounding families and things like that because they are out and they're dragging in the spiritual baggage all the time. And finally, when something major happens, or God forbid, hopefully they discover it too soon. A lot of people will either get out of the business, they'll just get out of it, and then eventually that spiritual activity will fade away, or they will find somebody more experienced and they will say, please, I thought I knew, and then they will become more humble and they'll say, please, I need help. Like, and then that's when you start learning. I had to go through that same thing when our home was haunted and me and my wife at the time were experiencing like the doorknobs, like somebody was trying to walk in on us while we're trying to make love and stuff. It's like what the hell? We were creating a lot of problems in our life and we didn't realize it. And then eventually we had to learn from a more experienced person that was around and they said, here's how to start maintaining things spiritually. And then as you go later on in life, you meet other people on another level that will help you to the next level and teach you things. So again, I just wanted to throw that out there too.
the thing is, from my standpoint, from my journey, with me having my gifts, I do, you know, the spirits understand that they can communicate with me. So sometimes I get attacked. I don't know if attack's the right word, but like you witnessed at the shrine, everybody trying to talk to me at one time, and you were there. It gets overwhelming sometimes. So yeah, imagine what that would have been like if I didn't have protection. I mean, it was intense to begin with. I mean, so yeah, so it's important. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the book and the show, and let's get you out of here.
Well, I mean, yeah, I wrote my book a few years ago. I'm still riding that pony, even though it's been a few years. But you can find my book. There's hardly any paperbacks I personally own, but I hopefully will have some when I show up at your event, and I do autograph them as you saw, like at Smoky Mountain Terror. But this book here contains. You can get it on Amazon, by the way. Um, but the book was. I never intended to, like, it's not the most scholarly thing. It's not going to blow your mind, and as far as like intellectually, but it will. In my opinion, it does. I have all my theories, so to speak, like the overall big picture of things. Maybe some things have changed since then. I don't know, but I do talk a little bit. There's a few stories in there of some experiences I had when I was younger and when I was a teenager, and so there's a few little ghost stories in there. Um, and then a lot of theory, paranormal theory, of what I've kind of seen over the years. I tie it into some different scriptures, not just the Bible, but a few other ancient scriptures. Um, and so in the end, when you're done, it's like it may give you that big picture of, okay, I see where Josh is seeing through his experience over the years. I always felt like the truth lies somewhere in the middle. So there's that. The show you can find on Paraflix, Teps Investigates. You can also find me on YouTube under Teps Investigates. You can find me on Facebook under the Everything Paranormal Show. Um, and I am looking at expanding. I do have TikTok, and of course some of the stuff from gets posted on Instagram. But I am looking at. I'm bringing on a person to do more media stuff for me because I suck at social media. So I've got a person that's slightly younger that is going to hopefully be posting more things for me, helping me out with social media. But she was recently in a car accident, so she's been recovering, and it was a pretty serious accident, actually on her way to an investigation. So she had a serious accident, and so she's recovering. Um, and but it's going to take her a little bit more again because she had like broken ribs and stuff. But she's going to be probably doing a lot of social media for me. Um, but again, and I'm going to be in Knoxville coming up August 1st, 2nd, and 3rd at CreepyCon. I'm going to be doing a panel there. Of course, I'm going to be at your event at the end of September. And I'm also going to be in Rock Island Esoteric Expo. That's going to
October
be
4th.
October 4th.
I'm there too.
Yes. It's like a 12-hour drive for me, so that's going to be crazy. But,
Yeah.
but I'm looking forward to all that. And those are at least the places you can find me. We are filming season 2. We have about a little over halfway filmed, so we got some more um, investigations that we're getting ready to film. So I'm looking forward to that to finish off season 2, and then hopefully we'll be starting to release that coming up in the next month or so. We'll be starting to release episodes on Paraflix.
So I'm actually writing my book, Josh. What I like about your book, and I don't have a copy yet because you told me to wait, but I read it while we was there, or most, I read some, and I like the fact that your personalities here in your book. It's not like a lot of the books you read, especially on like introduction books and that stuff. It's all blah 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 blah. That's kind of how I'm writing my book. Even my title is funny. My title is "Don't Buy Generic Batteries," and it's probably not a demon. So that's important, I think. And
I
as
thought we
far as
came up with a better title, though. Didn't we talk about this?
oh, we did,
Yes.
we did. I have to go back and read that. I still got it on my phone. We did come back with a better title.
I
That's
know
right.
we came up with some good stuff though, man. I was like we were like instantly collaborating. Like when we first met, I'm like, look, man, no offense,
Yeah,
but let me work with you, and then we came up with some good stuff.
we
So
did.
trust me.
I have to go back and visit that because I remember we came up with something that kind of crossed over with the podcast and everything. So yeah, that was good. And then and as far as what I got going on, I'm going to be at the Cape Paracon in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and then I got an investigation coming up at Waverly Hills, and then I got an investigation coming up, and that's July 10th. And then on July 12th, I got an investigation in Paducah, Kentucky, at the General Tillman House. General Tillman was a Confederate general, and that was the house he actually lived in. And so I'm going to investigate that. And then my September is
Wait,
crazy.
when is that? When is that one in the Kentucky? You said that General.
The General Tillman, July 12th.
That's pretty soon though.
Are you going to come?
I want to do that because, well, it's hard to explain, but no, I want to do that one eventually.
It's only a 6-hour drive, Josh.
Right?
But anyway, so so thank you for being on the show. I'll have to have you back on because, like you said, we could talk for hours. I was I will see you in September, if not before. Everybody look up Josh's stuff, buy his book. He's a good guy. All right, we'll see everybody next week. Next week, my guest is going to be Dana Marie from Get Haunted. So that will be another good episode. Everybody, thanks for tuning in.